North Springs here.
Okay, we are live again this morning,
2-3 hours.
and we're going to continue our discussion. We're going to move on to railroads. It's something I think we're all familiar with in Vermont. We have passenger rail from Burlington to New York City, which is exciting. We have Allison Crowley, a lobbyist for the Rail Association. We have Charles Hunter, Genesee and Wyoming Railroad Services. Railroad. Railroads are picking up all over the country. They're doing, I think, more and more business because it's so convenient to haul by rail. So who would like to join us first this morning? Charles, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, sir. Morning, committee.
Morning. How's Genesee and Wyoming Railroad doing?
We're doing well.
Well, I'd like to know that it is really good. Could you restate that, please?
We're doing well.
I never hear anything that's doing well.
How big is Genesee and Wyoming? They cover how many states?
We are in 43 states and we have about 115 railroads.
Wow.
We're also in
That's
the
huge.
Netherlands, a lot of operations in the United Kingdom. We sold an operation in Australia a few years ago.
Are they the largest railroad in the country?
They're the largest holding company of railroads because each railroad is its own standalone business, so to speak.
And again, I'll go back. We still dispatch those out of St. Albans, Vermont.
Yes, so all the US railroads are dispatched there and most of the Canadian railroads are dispatched there as
It's
well.
amazing. It just amazed me when I visit that place, how
Do they have to speak French or the or Quebec?
So there's a couple of French railroads and those are still dispatched under contract by a Canadian firm in Montreal area. But the ones that are primarily English are dispatched in St. Albans.
Yes.
So that's all railroads or just the Genesee Wyoming?
Just G&W. When we were Rail America, we did some contract dispatching for other companies, but G&W, we're just dispatching our own.
And that's the St. Albans.
Yes, in fact, we have a new building. We just moved out of the 1865
Oh, you moved
building.
out there? Wow.
So
Imagine you outgrew it, sure.
we kind of did a partnership with the city up there, and we have a new building where the Fonda paper plant used
Oh,
to
yeah,
be,
yeah.
just a couple of blocks north of the old building. And so the dispatchers are all moved in there, and we have some other clerical functions. My office is in there as well. So we'll be having our grand opening in May, and we'll certainly invite all of you
Yeah.
to come up for that.
Very, very exciting. I was impressed myself.
Yeah, there's about 70 employees there.
Wow. That big.
So other, like CSX, they dispatch their own,
Yes, their center is in Jacksonville, Florida.
and some of the western lines.
The BNSF is in Fort Worth, Union Pacific's in Omaha.
How,
Go ahead.
how was that coordination? I guess you're all running your own trains on your own tracks. So if you have to run on somebody else's tracks, they deal with the.
So that's a great subject. So like we have the Connecticut Southern Railroad down the road here from West Springfield that runs to New Haven. And we run on Amtrak to get between, it's about 55 miles between West Springfield and New Haven. So we run on Amtrak's track. They dispatch that, I believe, out of Boston. So they coordinate our trains on their track. And then when we get to Hartford, we get off their line, get back on our own track.
So it's whoever owns the track does the dispatching.
Correct.
And they pay according to mileage on that track, right?
We pay by car mile on that
Yeah.
track.
I was in Daytona years ago and I saw the train go to Mount Railway car. And I couldn't believe Mount Railway was in Daytona, but the car could be gone for months. But it's all paid for by the recording on the wheels of whatever it is.
Right, if you own or lease a freight car and it's on somebody else's track, you get compensated by the hour and by the mile.
That's what they told me. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I was amazed to keep track of all those over.
Yes, it used to all be by paper, but now it's all, of course, computerized.
So on the news has been the very serious rail derailment and the and just the toxic products and chemicals were. You must have to have an emergency response
Correct.
plan for every line of every bit of rail you have.
Yes. So taking the New England Central as an example, the dispatch center has a list of all the mileposts. So from the Canadian border to New London, Connecticut, each mile is a number, just like the interstate's number. And they can tell what jurisdiction has those mileposts. They know the emergency response, people within those limits. So they know who to contact. And then we have our own contractors that are under contract, should there be some sort of incident, can also respond, that are railway specific type contractors.
But have expertise in hazardous materials.
Correct.
That's certainly a lot of the cars what they carry is could result in the need for hazmat response.
Yes. Yeah. But overall, it's the safest mode of transportation. That's our highest priority at our company, and certainly all the railroads. It's our highest priority is to move our commodities safely.
Yes.
Does GW do any passenger?
No, well, we don't. In Vermont, Amtrak runs on our line. We operate a commuter service in Portland, Oregon called TriMet. It's on our track, but
Where does it go? Just around Portland? Or
it's just suburban Portland area. So our crews man the trains. It's dispatched actually out of St. Albans. So that one we do operate. We have other places. There's a few dinner trains or tourist trains, Providence and Worcester, out of Missouri, New York State, kind of in situations we inherited when we bought various operations. The dinner train in Cincinnati, it was there when we bought that railroad, so that still operates. So there's different contract arrangements, but that one in Portland is the only one I'm aware of that we actually truly operate tolls.
Do you own any lines in Vermont that are not active?
No, we did not.
Is the rail network growing? Are you looking at ways to connect Burlington to Boston, so to speak, or other areas?
No, I would not say the rail network's growing. There is actually a line of right-of-way that connects from White River Junction down through New Hampshire. It's a trail. It's owned by the state of New Hampshire. There's a lot of lines. There's quite a few here in Vermont. You guys are probably aware that were rail banked or called rails to trails that can be brought back to rails should the need arise at some point. But there's very little of that ever happens. The costs are tremendous to put the track tag. So you really have to have a solid economic reason to do something like that.
Is rail growing?
The last few months, traffic's actually been down, but usually when rail traffic starts to slow, that's a kind of forecast of the economy starting to slow in general. Usually hits the railroads first because you're shipping ahead of time to stock up on your goods, so to speak. So when the railroads start to slow, the economy is starting to slow.
So the canary in the mine.
Yes.
Yep.
Any issues that your company has with the state that you want us to know about, or just things are all fine and dandy?
Vermont's really a great state. We have great partnerships with V-Trans. We've done a lot of projects with V-Trans. They're very supportive of not only our railroad, but Vermont Railway, CSX, the other carriers. So we look at this as really kind of a model of dealing with states across our system. This is the right way to do it. It's been that way for quite a long time, actually. I can't think of any actual issues, quote unquote, on the negative side of the ledger. We just did a Chrissy grant application last fall with V-Trans as the applicant for our other railroad up here, St. Lawrence and Atlantic, which comes down through Island Pond to upgrade the
And
rest
that
of
goes
the
on to
rail.
Portland, right?
Yes, and into Portland.
So that goes through, where in New Hampshire does that?
Crosses the border at North Stratford, goes down to Groveton, Merlin, Gorham, and then into Maine.
What speeds are you guys running on your tracks?
NECR is 40 miles an hour freight. Amtrak is 59 in dark territory and 79 in signal territory. St. Lawrence Atlantic is primarily 25 miles an hour all freight.
Is there any 79-mile-an-hour Amtrak in Vermont?
Yes, south of White River, it's signaled, and there's 79 mile an hour sections down that way.
I had a rail advocate reach out to me, and I also consider myself a rail advocate, but they were stressing for more signalization to speed up the tracks throughout Vermont. Do you have like a short list of things that the Vermont State Senate could focus on to have rail service be improved and sped up or otherwise?
So we've got a project right now with Amtrak to signalize from Brattleboro down to East Northfield, and East Northfield is the Mass border, where the Vermonter goes off onto the Mastono track to head on down south to Springfield. So that will be done in the next year or so. That's about 13 miles of more signalization. That's on the signal side. That's really the only thing that we have cooking, so to speak. White River to St. Albans is all dark territory, so that's 59. There would have to be some sort of business case made that you would want to signalize a portion or all of that.
Just connector, improve that at all to get the Ethan Allen to be able to go up to Montreal ultimately?
Certainly, that's tracks there. It's 10 miles an hour, so it'd be 15 miles an hour currently for passenger operations. If they were out there, that's dark territory. If the state was interested or Amtrak was interested, we'd certainly be open to having those discussions, but it's currently all.
10 miles an hour is not very fast. Oh my God. Jeez.
But the other thing is it's 6 miles.
Yeah. it's not-
So
It's what?
it's 6 miles basically,
Oh, okay.
point to point. You're running through pretty urban situation where you're not going to run 79 miles an hour down through there. Just there's curvature, you're in people's backyards, there's a lot of crossings.
Is there space or capacity to run a second passenger train on the
On the main line.
Vermonter?
Yes, so when we did the high-speed rail project, which we started, I think in 2009, 2010, part of that arrangement with the Federal Railroad Administration was that it was good for a second round trip. So there is the capacity to add that should Amtrak wish to do that.
So it's not like there's too much freight, because I've heard some lines, the railroads are like, hey, we have enough freight here, we don't have time to run it.
Well,
But
I
that's not
mean,
the case there.
no, I mean like on the western roads like BNSF or UP, they're running a train every 30 minutes. That's,
Oh, yeah, through, like Flagstaff, those
Yes.
trains are going through,
But that's not the case.
that's not the case. So
but it was like every 16 minutes. at
Could be,
times.
right, in each direction, yeah.
And this might be more of an Amtrak question, but it seems like you know up to speak to all of these things. I know when the circles I float in Burlington, they would take the train more if there was a red eye option where you could get on at 11 or midnight and get in, arrive in town the next morning to attend to whatever you need to in New York, DC, or Philly. Has that been on your radar at all? Have you looked at expanding service there?
That's not our route.
No, that's not.
Yeah,
So no, the answer is.
So-
They don't introduce a bill.
Yeah. The Vermonter too.
Right.
You're gonna tax it, they're trying to support
They're
it.
gonna tax it into the bill.
right.
Do you have many requests for sidings, offloads?
That's a great question. I wish there were more requests because that would mean there's more manufacturing or distribution needs out there, but we've got a couple that I really can't disclose or in discussion, so to speak, but we do get a few inquiries. I wish we got more.
And is Omnia served by your rail line?
Not directly, but we interchange for Vermont Railway, and so their product comes up to Burlington or goes over to Bellows Falls to get on the NECR, and we give it to CN or CSX or another railroad. So we're part of the transportation chain.
How many mile of tracks do you have in Vermont?
We have about, let's say, 175 miles.
I think back when we had that big project in Middlebury and the cooperative agreements that were reached, you know, in terms of rerouting and using
Yes,
your
detouring,
tracks,
right.
yeah, was really a critical part of making
Yeah,
that
for
work.
over a year.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, no, that was a big deal for, like you said, that required a lot of cooperation and coordination, you know, like we were saying before. So once those trains were on our railroad, then we dispatched them.
So rail's kind of an older mode of travel. What's new in rail? What's the new ideas in rail? More efficient engines or different cars or all the above, none of the above?
That's a very good question. So one of the things we've done in the last few years, not only in Vermont, but in the other states where we operate on the New England Central, New Hampshire, Mass, Connecticut, is we've upgraded the track to handle 286,000 pounds. So that's the modern freight car weight. So that's a big deal for not only Vermont, but the rest of the railroad. So that's where we are there. On the locomotive side, there are some test locomotives. We don't have any here right now, at least, that are looking at hydrogen power. There are some, this is not really new, but there are some that are battery operated or battery hybrid operated. So there's some of that technology that's out there as well on other railroads.
Yeah, they move a lot of freight nationwide. Just think of the trucks that they replaced, thank God, because you never get freight from with the trucking industry the way it is today. Wow, yeah,
Every freight car is equivalent of between 3.5, 4 trucks.
right. Yeah, the only thing it's hard for them is to transport perishables because, you know, they don't have the time zone, but other than that, I'd hate to see what the price of goods would be without that rail because, wow.
You do much refrigeration or they just don't?
There's really no distribution center up here that's rail served. There's not the volume for that up here. Some of our other railroads down in Hartford, we get in frozen French fries down there on our Connecticut Southern Railroad for distribution. So where you have dense population, that does happen, but it's not up here.
So is Genesee in Wyoming privately owned or is it a stockholder?
So up until about 3 years ago, it was a stock held company, and then it was acquired by a company out of Canada called Brookfield Asset Management. And so once they bought us, the G&W stock went away. Brookfield has its own stock, but they hold many companies besides G&W.
Does G&W have a trucking affiliation?
No, we do not in the US. What we do make available are a lot of transload sites where, and just down the road here at Montpelier Junction is a good example of that, where the propane terminal is located down by the Amtrak station. So they offload right into trucks for delivery out of that terminal. And that's pretty common, where we have various terminals, we call it transload into trucks.
Remember years ago, we had to lower the tunnel in Bellows Falls, I think it was.
Yes.
Railroad cars through a double stack.
Right, and auto racks, in fact, I saw yesterday, we had some auto racks in St. Albans that are headed through there again.
Yeah.
One of the things that people have taken issue with is the number of really, and some are just kind of seasonal, but the number of railroad cars or tankers that are on sidings for prolonged periods of time. And they're kind of parked there and they're rusting there in some cases. What do you do with, do you recycle? What do you do with those old cars? Is there a market for all, I mean, it's all, I guess, could be recycled, or what do you do with them?
So
You don't take it to gate salvage, I'm
No.
sure.
cars are regulated that they have generally speaking, they have a 40-year life cycle that you're allowed to keep them in service and interchange them with another railroad. If you just keep it on your railroad, you can go beyond the 40 years. Once their life cycle is fully depreciated, so to speak, they go to scrap. And there are specialized scrap yards. I don't think there's any in this state that I'm aware of that will buy those and cut them up and recycle them.
Grain, fuels, fertilizer, and lumber. What else is big as far as freight?
Propane is huge in this state. You know, we have the terminal here in Montpelier. We also have one in White River Junction. Interchange. Salt is huge for road melting.
This new tax go through, we won't be selling propane anyway, so.
That's kind of scary.
It is.
That's a huge business.
Oh my God. I had the way they're talking about taxing these products, those products, it's, wow.
Yeah, that would be a negative for our industry for sure.
Lumber still shipped on rail.
Yeah, we have a large transload in Island Pond. It's called Richard Pelletier.
Oh, okay.
Big transload up there.
Up your way, Russ.
Where does that go into Canada? Does it connect with
Then it connects with Canadian Pacific and Sherbrooke
Sherbrooke? Okay, that's where it
and
connects.
Canadian National just outside of Montreal, east of Montreal, Southport.
So that's where it goes into Sherbrooke.
Yes. Our yard up there is in Richmond, Quebec.
Have you been involved in the conversations about doing a passenger service through that Island Pond to Fort? When I was in Maine this last summer, there was an article in the paper there about some business entity that was trying to push for bring Canadians to the coast of Maine, basically.
There's been a lot of press about that, but I can tell you there's no agreements to do that train. There's really been no discussions to do that.
Because somebody would have to buy the cars and then make a deal with you to run it on your rails.
Yeah, and that brings with it liability, insurance, subsidizing it, because there's no way it would make money on its own. There's
So
a
you
lot.
own the line from that line into
All the way to Portland.
all the way to Portland? Or-
So we own the line in Canada up to near Montreal, and then we own down to Danville Junction, which is around Auburn. The state of Maine owns from Auburn to Portland, and it's currently out of service for lack of business.
Do you go into every major, a lot of, do you go into most major ports on the East Coast?
The only port that we serve on the New England Central is New London, Connecticut. There's some activity down there to actually do more rail business. We have other subsidiaries that, like part of Savannah, we switched that. West Coast. So there are other, we had an operation in Galveston, we just don't have that anymore, but there are some ports where we do the switching, but not the line haul. You know, CSX typically on the East Coast has the line haul out of ports.
Our closest, largest international port is Montreal, which they're putting in 1.5 billion. It's just Amtrak that's having an issue getting to Montreal. You have trains that go up to Montreal with cargo, yeah?
Yeah, so CN actually runs down to Alburg, and then they get on our track and come into St. Albans, and we interchange cars with CN there. So yeah, there's no issues with freight to Montreal.
Okay, anything we can do for you?
Just keep supporting us. You guys,
Well, we're good at that.
you are. This is a great committee. You've always been supportive of our
Very, very supportive.
railroads.
We underestimate how much they do good for us. Of
Yes.
All the freight, you don't notice it, people don't see the.
That's a very good point.
And that's, it's unknown, but there's thousands and thousands of freight, pounds of freight that comes on there, whether it's salt or fuel or whatever it is that we don't see on the highways, which is good news.
You know, years ago in the ERA funding, actually there was direct funding, federal funding to New England Central. With the latest federal structure bill, is there any similar funding to New England Central that would indirectly or directly benefit Vermont?
So even the ERA funding was not direct. That went through, V-Trans was the applicant for that. They were the recipient and we did the project.
Right, okay.
So there's a few programs out there. One's called CRISI, Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvement. And we just did an application with V-Trans to upgrade the St. Lawrence and Atlantic. So that's out there. I actually did 4 applications in that round. We had an application in a couple in the Midwest and one in Pennsylvania. So that program's primarily what's used to now fund smaller railroads, short lines and regionals. That's funded for the next, they had around, so 4 more years we're funded through that transportation bill.
Well, thank you, Charles. I appreciate you coming. If we can do anything for you, let us know.
One more thing.
Yep.
The Pan Am Southern transaction, which you and I met with CSX and Norfolk Southern last year. We're probably going to take over operations of that in April or May. So that'll be a new railroad called Berkshire and Eastern that'll operate that under contract.
Where is that located?
So that'll be from Mechanicville, New York to Ayer, Massachusetts, and then down to Hartford and Waterbury,
So not in
Connecticut,
Vermont at all.
and then north up the NECR to White River.
Connecting back to your existing line.
Yes, yeah. So we're excited about that. That'll be a 3rd railroad for us up in the region.
Very good.
All
I
right.
appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Appreciate
Okay.
it.
Brought some calendars if anybody's interested.
Oh, good. You like rail. I like rail. Okay, Bill,
Thank you.
you want to join us this morning?
Yes, sir. I'm a rail buff, just so you know.
All right.
Even though you're the boss of the truck.
Get rid of those trucks, you know.
No, they all work in concert to bring you your goods.
We all have to get along.
True.
Good. There's Roland's truck, not up nice and close. You guys know.
Yeah, we need a train.
Know who the boss is.
Yeah, we need a train.
Oh, no, Roland gave that to me. I'm sharing it.
Just not the committees.
No, he gave it to me.
If Allison gave you a train, would you put it up there?
Sure.
Duly noted.
Our local-
Charles, we need a train to put up there, okay? Model train or something, we got a truck up there.
I can do that.
Yeah, good, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for coming
See you
in.
later.
All right.
Okay, Bill,
Well,
what's your issue this morning?
Well, all kidding aside, as you know, we work in concert
Right.
with the rail constantly. A great example of that is Barrett Trucking hauls salt to almost every town in the state out of the train depot in
Yeah.
Shelburne, right?
See the truck on the road every day.
Right, on the east side of the state. I didn't mean to. So but depending on the commodity, who's hauling it will be who's the most efficient doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, and how quickly you need to get it there. So, so there's been discussion in the past and maybe currently about permits and what's a permit and what's a special permit for this size truck. And we're going to study that, right? I understand the forest products folks are talking about that. So I thought it might make sense to go over, review slightly with the committee. It was good for me to go through it as well. But weight limits on our highways in our towns and our states. So I had sent to Mike earlier this morning. I don't know if he's had a chance to get to it yet. The pertinent statutes on this for your, just for the record here. And the key thing, of course, is first of all, you need to know you need a permit. And it's not always self-evident when you pull into a town or into the state of Vermont if you need a permit. Classic example that you've done away with is the one that used to be on Route 4, right? It wasn't something that was easily ascertainable.
We took care of that.
We took care of that. So These issues are thornier. They're more related to municipal authority, state authority. You know, the traveling publics need to rely on a road that is beat up by heavy vehicles on it, right? So first of all, Title 23 is where this all is. And Section 1392 deals with general weight limits, right? On state highways and Class 1 town roads, which is basically Main Street, right? At 80,000 pounds is the default limit. I'm not going to talk about special limits for more axles and products, and that's that other discussion you're going to have this summer. But on Class 2, 3, and 4 roads, which are most of our mileage, the default weight limit is 24,000 pounds every minute of every day of the year. So, as an example, in my town, Northfield, you go down Route 12, is known as Main Street. That's an 80,000 pound road. You turn off of Main Street to go to Fernandes Hardware on the Common, on Water Street, not Water Street, Wall Street in Northfield. That's a 24,000 pound road.
Didn't we do this?
Yeah, so
Sounds very familiar.
yeah, so good. So then there's two kinds of permits that come up. One is these special weight limits that we've heard about, like the mud season. Let's call them mud season permits, because special gets confusing, because special means it's different than the regular rule. So the mud season permits, a long time ago, you put into place 1400A, the statute, which has special weight limits that gives to the towns the authority to set weight limits different than the default. So if you have a bad Class 3 road, you know you can't run 24,000 pounds because the mud season, you'll sink out of sight. Your select boards, your municipal authorities can set a special lower weight limit on that roadway for a certain period of time, and usually a very specific area of the road, and you have to file it with AOT online so that people can find it, right? And that's where you go, and if you know where to look, and that you have to look, you go to DMV's website, town highways and bridges, weight restrictions. You can pull it up and look in every town in the state, who's got a weight restriction, who's got a special limit. Again, this is only that classic mud season limit. Went up in Marshfield on Maple Hill, come out of Plainfield, up over the top, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about, Senator Birchler. That's going to be set as probably a 6,000 pound road or a 12,000 pound road for March 1st to May 1st, right? And then it goes away on. Yes, a fuel truck would weigh more than 24,000 anyway, let alone a special weight limit. So the fuel companies, the building supply companies, the local trucking companies, Barrett Trucking certainly knows where to get that special permit so they can deliver products on those 24,000 pound roads.
What's that?
Where does that come into all this?
Yeah, the special permit just to be over the 24,000. So that's like a
That's
year-round
right.
exemption.
Right. You'd have to do that, you'd have to get that annual permit from each town that requires a permit.
And they do that.
And they do that.
If they know.
If you know who to call and where to get the permit from. DMV is trying to help with this, and that we 3 years ago.
We gave them instructions to look at how to do some kind of and
Right.
to really
And that's,
address this.
yes, and that's what's in, you're telling them to continue doing that in section, your draft of the miscellaneous DMV bill, sections 32, where you're having them take a look at special permits, but also reminding them that we want to hear from you with the status of your electronic permitting portal. Because our industry has certainly heard from Commissioner Minola that they've run into some difficulties in getting that to work successfully. And we need to make sure that we all interface with our towns in doing this. The towns need to be on board with this. The good news, in a sense, is that 15 years ago, I think, maybe it's been 20 years ago, the legislature already did that with the special weight permits. They said to the towns in 1400A, you can have a special mud season permit, just to call it right. But under 1400B, you have to file that with the state on their website, or you can't give people tickets for it. Seems fair. If you can put it out there to folks to find that notice, like, you know, I can go online and search, what road does Williston have shut down for mud season on here?
We did make a change last year to that section. Clarified. I remember working with Micah.
But that was the bill that didn't pass.
Well, on the legislative, you know, at the bottom here, it says July 1st, 2022 there was a change.
Well, that, you're looking at, which statute is that?
Wouldn't we have done that in the middle of miscellaneous bill that didn't pass, or did we do it the year
This is
before?
14B, filing restrictions.
Right, but we don't know what change was made to that by looking at when it was done. We could look at that act and say that something affected 1400 feet, but it wasn't about the requirements to post it on the state website.
It was about that, but it was just clarifying. There was some wording in there that confused the town clerks. Sometimes they were like, it was just, I mean, it didn't make sense. It was
Right.
supposed to make it a little bit easier, but I think it's still, at least for my town clerk, they don't like this.
They don't like having to post the mud season stuff on.
It's common, like you have to do it all manually. You gotta do it every year, even though for the last 80 years, they've always posted that same road, the same limit for the same
Right.
weeks, but they gotta go in there.
Every single year.
And they gotta do it before a certain amount of time, and there's all these, and they say that the website seems like it was made in 1973. And
Probably was.
It was actually right around 10. They were on COBOL over there.
Yeah, right.
which
They
was
feel like
about
it's
5-10
needs
years
to be
ago.
updated.
So it's, again, it would be certainly a great thing to be talking with League of Cities and Towns about. And you're already gonna be doing that anyway, this proposal in here. So I don't know if there's any changes that or requests we're asking you on section 32 of your bill, we just support that. And the reason we support it is because we'd like to make it easier for people to comply with the law and not get hit with a massive fine. You know, unless they know about it. I mean, it's one thing to say to somebody, you knew you shouldn't drive your 80,000-pound truck down this road. But I've handled cases for trucking companies that came into an area and were completely unaware of it. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. And they got a big fine. In some cases, trying to turn onto that road to find a safe place to turn around because I'm going in the wrong direction. They pull in Williston by the post office.
I do anything.
I don't know, they're in Chittenden County. So, and,
Or the notch, you can't turn around.
well, that's a different one that should be out there. Yes, Senator.
Because you're on that, I don't want to take away from your presentation. I apologize if I am. You guys have a huge presence of trucks in Vermont. I mean, is there anything that you guys can do with Google to protect those drivers from coming in, to get Google to change those algorithms in the GPS?
Well, again, there's sort of, there's certain kinds of GPS that you can use for commercial trucking and buy a commercial level of it. It's fairly expensive, so most folks don't do it. They're on, Google Maps, Apple Maps. And how would they do that? They would need to know that they could plug it, that they could do this, and maybe they could purchase a Vermont module. You could probably have a Vermont module to plug into your Apple iPhone for $6 a month. Maybe that could work, but until right now they don't do it.
Well, it's pretty amazing though, because I go down through and I just use the Apple GPS if I'm going. I use it a lot.
Yep.
But they're even warning me of road construction. And I mean, so it's pretty instant. I mean,
Real time.
it's pretty
OnStar.
it's pretty there, but
Waze, WAZE warns you of cops too.
yeah.
Why couldn't they warn you that, hey, this road, don't drive on this road if your vehicle weighs more than X pounds?
Yeah. Or simply said, restricted tractor trailers.
They've got a bill, which actually would address this, and I haven't introduced it yet, but it would actually, as we did last session, we talked about, or we expanded and made it more flexible that both the owner of the company, the employer, as well as the employee, one or the other, could be liable for the fine. So this bill would actually also extend that liability to the GPS providers if the employee driving the truck can show that the the Waze app or the Google app or the Apple app did not warn them adequately, clearly, to, regardless of vehicle, that they can't go traverse the notch with certain
There's
size trucks.
interstate conversation.
There is.
Oh.
But it might be a worthwhile discussion to have.
Oh,
So Monty,
Yes.
he's got a bill.
Oh, please.
and looking at this section, is there, I'm just keying on, on what you were saying. So if you, it would be nice if you could say, we always post that row between X date and X date. And so that you don't have to keep doing it every year, but it would just remain on file until the municipality changed it.
Right, or even if you could go in and say, same as last year, click one button,
I can tell
No
you,
change or something.
yeah.
and I can tell you too, as far as being part of a town, I think we talked about this the other day, is that some of these companies know more about what they're sending checks for than what we did. We didn't understand really a lot of what was going on.
So, well, but did Wanda give us an idea? This isn't going to be online permitting. That's not a November implementation schedule. No.
No, it's not. That's just the reality. We know that DMV's been looking at this diligently and trying to figure it out. And we just need to find a way to make it work. And if there's a way to bring other players to the table, like app software companies to link this up to what is a fairly unique thing in Vermont, municipal weight permitting has been a statute for a very long time. It's just not known outside of your individual location. And as we have more companies coming into Vermont, as we interact with the rest of the economy, it's going to keep happening. So that's a support for section 32, and let's see what we can do with that. And if there's something that we can look at with regard to apps on phones, happy to do it. Would be supportive of that. Second area I'd like to update you on is the EV truck rules. And update. We had the medium and heavy duty truck rules were put into place this past fall in Vermont, where Vermont follows on with what's called the California model with 16 or 17 other states. And are looking at that. It's not a mandate on the purchaser of the truck per se, it's a mandate on the manufacturers. But eventually it will have this focusing on Class 8 heavy trucks. This is that thing right there, the tractor unit. Require, I think, 30 or 40% by 2035 that are sold in Vermont be some form of non-fossil fuel. Maybe that's the best way to put it, this electric but right now, we can tell you that technology for those trucks is not ready for prime time. Will it be in the next 12 years? Yeah, we think so. It may not be an electric truck. Those limitations on these are such that, as an example, UPS contracted with Tesla to buy tractor trailers in 2018. They have yet to receive them. Not because Tesla's not trying to get it done, but because they're not getting it done yet. Now there's issues with where the materials for batteries come into. If you've heard the recent, I was listening to National Public Radio, a discussion with the author of a book called Cobalt Red about Congo and where the cobalt is mined, how medieval the conditions are for humans working in those areas, and where that, and also for the environment, because it takes things like sulfuric acid to break the cobalt out from its connection, the chemical bonds it has with copper and manganese and other items. So my view, just as a concerned consumer, is I don't think that technology is where you want to go. But the good news is those rules will have enough flexibility in them, so it could be something, it could be hydrogen.
You compress natural gas.
Well, that's it to a certain, with a star next to it that says, well, as long as it doesn't create greenhouse gases, which they do, but there's much less than. So if there was some way to incentivize that, what does Vermont do that California is not already trying to do? I don't know. I mean, we don't have we don't have the size of economy or the size of government oversight that California has. In fact, 195 countries in the world don't have that level, right? Because California is what, the 6th or 7th largest economy in the world, standing alone. So hopefully we can tag on to what they do with that. I can tell you that when my members look at the, their view is, oh, we're being told we have to buy electric trucks. And they go, what? Where are you going to buy one? Freightliner will sell you one for $416,000. I told you this last spring. It's no different now. You'll take delivery on it a couple of years from now, after you paid your money now. And your range will be real world 100 to 150 mile range with that truck. Now that can work. That can work in certain environments. It can work on our school buses. It can work in local delivery type situations. Our trash haulers certainly could take advantage of those to have a cleaner environment from, instead of putting out the diesel fumes out there, right? So is it really there yet? I mean, you talk to the bus folks, they're trying to do it. Berrytown has an electric bus they're running. One of my members is running that bus for them. Putting in your charging system is key. Being able to have it be warm enough for children in the winter is a big problem. Such that they're putting diesel generators on the roof to heat the bus, because the electric battery doesn't have enough surplus capacity.
Doing that in passenger buses right now.
Yeah. So as the same with the school buses, so they're just really trying to figure that one out. Is it electric? It'll be electric until one of them catches fire. And I hope that we can find some other way to do it, but right now we're just not there yet.
Okay, we're gonna
Pretty grim.
5 more minutes.
Any questions for me? Any directions?
Do you know what a milk truck weighs? Is it over 80,000, over 60,000 pounds?
A tractor trailer with a milk hauling milk. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we did that permit one for 90,000. No special permit there.
So is it, that's considered a farm trailer? I'm trying to find that.
But there's a
milk
special
truck.
permit that we were talking about.
Well, fine.
That's right in
So
here,
where was it where we were getting rid of a permit and then they
the
were.
$10 one.
Yeah, the $10 one and adding it all together.
Because there's an exemption from 1400 to 14A, which you sent us, for farm trucks, provided the gross weight of the farm truck does not exceed 60,000 pounds.
That's more like the truck that's hauling back your silage that you just cut out.
Then there's also a farm tractor or farm trailer shall be exempt from the permit requirements of section 1400, 14A.
Again, don't conflate tractor and trailer with tractor trailer, because that's
What
not
is
the
a
same.
farm trailer?
Farm trailer is something you haul behind a farm vehicle.
Those Gale chopper boxes.
Or
So
sometimes,
milk trucks.
Hey, wait.
aren't either of these.
Right,
no,
because the milk truck is owned by the company,
I don't know.
Agrimark, whoever's the local.
So, because I don't know if you were in here the other day, I was trying to find that. My understanding is that they're exempt from the town's mud road permits.
Anything agricultural probably would be.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I heard that it was specifically farm truck, because the milk's got to go somewhere, so you
Gotta
can't just say
go.
you can't.
It's got to go today.
Yeah.
not Next week.
You can't say, oh, the roads are down for 2 weeks. What do I even do with that now? So that they could, but I can't find it.
Find that specific exemption in statute.
Yeah, so somebody.
Let's get your doorkeeper, Jackie Folsom, in here. She would.
Well, I know, I was gonna ask her. I was looking for her the other day. I was at a Farm Bureau meeting that just came up.
Sure today.
Yeah, it's the other day, so I'll ask her later.
Well, it's in here in section 19, and it relates to the milk hauling.
Oh, there's, what section is next?
It's 23 VSA, section 1392.
That would make sense, because 1392 is the general weight limits.
Overweight permits. As, that's for 80,000. For 382, let's see, milk. For milk,
I can figure it out later.
I can
I
help.
want to continue to just investigate a SAF truck If it specifically says milk trucks in it. It's
Well,
SAP
it
trucks.
says notwithstanding axle provisions, et cetera, when the load consists solely of unprocessed milk products as defined in, so that's pretty specific to hauling your milk, your raw milk from the farm.
Or unprocessed maple tree sap. That's what you're thinking about.
SAP.
Just adding,
Right, because it has the same issue. When the SAP's running, you can't just,
no sour.
you need to move it.
So that's 1392, sub 19 or something.
16.
16. That's where you want to go, Senator.
So
Get you
when
what's found
when
it
a
for you.
load consists solely of unprocessed
She
milk
would've been
products
obvious.
as defined,
Yeah.
or,
They're moving that
How
much
many
stuff.
trucks a day on Vermont
Goodrich's
highways?
are, they've got a huge operation.
I don't know the
Like,
answer
if
to
it lines up with the time that the SAP is running when the town posts the roads. And if it's-
that. I can tell you
It does light up. usually.
about 80% of everything you buy in Vermont came on a truck.
And a train.
Might have been on a train before that. That would be fine.
So that's what you want to add there, is amend that to include
Well, I want to
SAP.
consider it. I mean, I talked to my town clerk and they were of two minds. They were like, well, one way we want to support the sugar makers, but on the other hand, we don't want heavy trucks on our roads when they're not really
Well,
set up to take them.
Which gets to a larger discussion of the commercialization of sap, of syrup production in the state of Vermont. And you end up with these big companies with lines going everywhere.
Well, there's one on Road 2, just out of
Yep.
it's in Marshfield, Plainfield. That's a huge line coming
Those
down.
lines go all the way up the other side of Marshfield Pond.
They must, because there's a lot of
They do a
software
merge
in
there,
there. I was gonna say.
Oh, the snowmobile trail goes right next to it. I was just up there.
It is the best maple sap in the world. So who are we to prevent global economics from getting it out to people?
Exactly.
That's true.
Okay, anything else?
Thank you, sir.